Today, we're focusing on employment, worker protection, and immigration laws, which form a crucial part of the legal framework that governs business operations. Essentially, these laws dictate how businesses hire their employees, manage their workforce, ensure worker safety, provide fair compensation, and verify the eligibility of their workers to be employed. Understanding these laws is essential for any business to operate legally and ethically while protecting both the organization and its employees. We'll explore the various aspects and implications of these laws throughout this presentation. Let's take a closer look at the scope of business employment law. It covers three main areas. First, hiring and selection. This includes everything from recruiting and interviewing candidates to screening and verifying lawful eligibility to work. It's important that these processes comply with legal standards to ensure fairness and avoid discrimination. Second, the employment relationship itself. This area governs key aspects like wages, working hours, workplace safety, protection against discrimination, employee benefits, and overall rights in the workplace. These rules help maintain a fair and safe environment for employees. Finally, termination. This includes how employees are discharged or laid off, handling final pay, fulfilling notification duties, and managing any claims that might arise after employment ends. Understanding these elements helps businesses navigate legal responsibilities throughout the entire employment lifecycle. Let's talk about the at-will employment doctrine, a fundamental concept in business and employment law. Under this doctrine, the employer has the right to terminate an employee at any time and for almost any reason, as long as it's not illegal or discriminatory. This means the employer cannot fire someone based on race, gender, or other protected categories. On the other hand, employees also have the freedom to resign whenever they choose, without any obligation to stay with the company. Essentially, either the employer or the employee can end the employment relationship at any time, as long as the reason is lawful. This flexibility is a key feature of at-will employment. At-will employment gives employers broad power to terminate employees at any time, but this power isn't unlimited. Courts and laws put certain limits in place to protect employees when firing conflicts with important public values, promises made by employers, or basic fairness principles. One key restriction is the public policy exception. This means an employer can't fire someone for reasons that go against public policy. Like if an employee refuses to engage in illegal activities, reports illegal conduct, exercises legal rights such as serving on a jury, or files a workers' compensation claim. Another important limitation comes from implied contracts. Even if there's no formal written contract, employer statements in handbooks, policies, or verbal assurances can create an expectation that termination will only happen for good cause or after certain procedures, which courts may enforce. Finally, some states recognize a covenant of good faith, which prevents employers from firing employees in bad faith. For example, firing someone just to avoid paying commissions, bonuses, or other compensation already earned. This helps ensure terminations are fair and not motivated by dishonest reasons. The Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, is a key federal law that sets important standards for employment. First, it establishes the minimum wage, which acts as the federal baseline employers must pay workers for their hours. This ensures a basic level of fair compensation. Next, the FLSA requires overtime pay, specifically time and a half, for any non-exempt employees who work more than 40 hours in a single work week. This encourages fair. When it comes to wage and hour compliance, employers need to be incredibly precise in tracking time and pay practices. This isn't about rough estimates, it's about exact records. It's essential to pay at least the minimum wage for every hour an employee is eligible to be compensated for. Additionally, employers must correctly calculate overtime for employees who are non-exempt, ensuring they get paid fairly for those extra. When we talk about worker classification in terms of wage and hour laws, the key distinction is between exempt and non-exempt employees. Exempt employees are usually salaried and are not entitled to overtime pay under the Fair Labor Standards Act, meaning they don't receive time and a half for extra hours worked. To qualify as exempt, employees must pass the salary basis test, which requires meeting minimum salary thresholds. And their job duties must primarily involve executive, administrative, or professional functions. On the other hand, non-exempt employees have their hours carefully tracked and must be paid overtime for any hours worked over 40 in a week. This group can be paid hourly or on a salary basis, but it's important to remember that how they're paid doesn't solely determine their classification. A critical point here is the risk of misclassification. Getting it wrong can lead to serious consequences, including back pay for unpaid overtime, penalties, and even lawsuits. So, understanding these rules thoroughly is essential for proper employee classification and compliance with the law. When we talk about discrimination in employment, it's important to understand the legal framework that protects individuals in the workplace. Employment law, particularly equal opportunity laws, are designed to ensure that everyone has a fair chance regardless of certain personal characteristics. These laws protect specific groups, often referred to as protected classes. The main protected classes typically include age, race, gender, disability, religion, and national origin. This means employers cannot discriminate against employees or job candidates based on these characteristics. The principles of equal treatment apply across all aspects of employment, including hiring, pay, promotions, and termination. Essentially, this legal framework promotes fairness and prevents bias, helping to create a more inclusive and equitable work environment. Understanding these protections is crucial for both employers and employees to ensure compliance and respect in the workplace. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act plays a crucial role in ensuring fairness in the workplace. Essentially, it prohibits employers from making hiring, firing, or compensation decisions based on protected characteristics such as race, sex, religion, or national origin. For example, an employer cannot refuse to hire someone simply because of their ethnicity or gender. Similarly, firing an employee due to pregnancy or religious observance is forbidden under this law. Pay equity is also protected, meaning employers can't justify paying lower wages or offering fewer benefits to certain groups. This legislation helps create a more equitable work environment by holding businesses accountable for discriminatory practices. When we talk about sexual harassment in the workplace, it's important to understand the employer's responsibilities and the types of harassment that can occur. Employers can be held liable if supervisors harass employees, or if the business knew or should have known about harassment from coworkers and failed to take appropriate action. There are two main categories of sexual harassment. The first is quid pro quo, where job benefits or penalties are directly tied to accepting or rejecting unwelcome sexual advances or conduct. The second is a hostile work environment, which involves severe or widespread unwelcome behavior that makes the workplace intimidating, abusive, or offensive. Recognizing these categories helps businesses create safer, more respectful environments for everyone. Now, let's focus on the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, which plays a crucial role in ensuring equal opportunities at work. Essentially, the ADA protects qualified individuals with disabilities from discrimination in employment. This means that employers must not discriminate against these workers simply because of their disabilities. Importantly, employers are required to provide reasonable accommodations to employees with disabilities. These accommodations should enable them to perform their job duties effectively, provided that doing so does not cause undue hardship to the business. This strikes a balance between supporting employees and maintaining operational efficiency. Additionally, any disability-related questions or medical information must be handled carefully. Employers should keep this information confidential and limit inquiries to what is necessary. Protecting employee privacy is essential in fostering a respectful and inclusive workplace. So in summary, the key points are non-discrimination, reasonable accommodation, and confidentiality, all fundamental to holding the principles of the ADA. Here we're looking at the Reasonable Accommodations Framework, which is essential for understanding how to support employees with disabilities in the workplace. The first step is to identify the need. This means recognizing any limitation that might affect a person's ability to perform their job. It's about being observant and understanding the challenges someone might be facing. Next, we evaluate potential solutions. This involves carefully assessing options that can effectively accommodate the employee without causing undue hardship to the business. It's important to find practical, workable adjustments that meet both the employee's needs and the organization's capabilities. Finally, we implement and monitor the accommodation. Once the accommodation is in place, we don't just leave it at that. It's crucial to revisit and review to ensure the solution continues to work well over time. This framework aligns with the ADA and emphasizes an interactive process between employer and employee, aiming for a supportive and compliant workplace environment. Here we're looking at the core regulatory frameworks that shape employment law and worker protection in the workplace. First, OSHA, or the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, plays a critical role by setting and enforcing safety standards to ensure workers operate in safe environments. Then, the NLRB, or National Labor Relations Board, protects workers' rights to organize and bargain collectively, which is fundamental to fair labor practices. Next, the Family and Medical Leave Act, or FMLA, guarantees eligible employees unpaid, job-protected leave for certain family and medical reasons, balancing work and personal responsibilities. Additionally, state laws can vary widely, but often provide extra protections beyond federal regulations, so understanding these is essential for compliance. All these frameworks fall under the broader umbrella of employment law and protective laws designed not only to safeguard the workforce, but also to regulate daily operations through workplace standards. Together, they form the legal backbone for fair treatment, safety, and rights in business organizations. This complex legal landscape ensures that businesses operate responsibly while protecting their most valuable asset, their employees. OSHA's mission is to make sure that workplaces are safe and healthy by enforcing national standards that everyone must follow. These standards are crucial because they require employers to identify and control hazards that could harm workers. Employers also have to train their employees properly, provide the necessary protective equipment, and adhere to safety rules that are specific to their industry. Inspections play a key role in ensuring compliance. They can happen for several reasons, such as complaints from employees, reports of serious injuries or fatalities, or because the workplace operates in a high-risk industry. When OSHA finds violations during these inspections, employers may face citations and penalties, emphasizing the importance of maintaining safety standards. Another important aspect is record keeping. Employers are often required to keep detailed records of workplace injuries and illnesses. They must also report serious incidents promptly and within strict deadlines. This documentation helps track workplace safety trends and ensures that hazards are addressed before they lead to further harm. Overall, these OSHA standards are essential for protecting workers and promoting a culture of safety in the workplace. Immigration compliance is built on a solid foundation of understanding immigration law fundamentals. Businesses primarily interact with immigration law in three key ways: work authorization, employer sponsorship, and navigating the visa pathways that determine who can legally work in the United States. Let's break down the core employment pathways. First, the H-1B visa is used for specialty occupation workers. This pathway is crucial when companies sponsor professionals whose roles require specialized knowledge, such as engineers or IT specialists. Next is the L11 visa, which applies to intra-company transferees, typically executives, managers, or employees with specialized knowledge being transferred within the same company from abroad to the U.S. Then we have the EB, or employment-based immigrant visas. These provide a permanent pathway to lawful permanent residence and involve labor certification, priority categories, and sponsorship rules that employers must follow carefully. Another important category is the F1 OPT, which allows international students to work temporarily in a field directly related to their course of study, offering valuable practical training after graduation. To ensure lawful entry and work eligibility, businesses must verify employee status, understand sponsorship responsibilities, and comply with immigration laws as they relate to business organizations. These elements form the legal backbone necessary for businesses to operate within immigration compliance standards. Now let's talk about employer obligations under the Immigration and Nationality Act, or INA. One of the primary responsibilities is completing the I-9 verification process. This means confirming both the identity and work authorization of every new employee within the legally required timeframe. It's crucial to get this right to avoid compliance issues. Next is the use of E-Verify. Employers need to use this federal system when it's mandated, either by law, a contract, or specific state rules. It serves as a supplementary tool to help confirm an employee's eligibility to work in the United States. Another important point is document retention. Employers must keep I-9 forms for the full statutory period, which means holding on to these records for a set number of years. And if the government conducts an audit, you have to be ready to produce these documents promptly. Lastly, anti-discrimination is a key focus. Employers must apply all verification procedures consistently without bias towards citizenship status. That means no retaliation or unfair treatment based on the documents presented. Maintaining fairness here not only complies with the INA, but also promotes a respectful and lawful workplace environment. The Form I-9 is a critical part of immigration compliance and is a required hiring record for every new employee. Its main purpose is to verify eligibility to work in the United States. The process is time-sensitive and involves 3 key steps. First, the employee must complete Section 1 of the form on or before their first day of work. Next, the employer is responsible for verifying the employee's original identity and work authorization documents, which must be done within 3 business days. Finally, the employer certifies the form by completing it, retaining the records, and re-verifying when necessary. This process ensures that all employees are legally authorized to work and helps protect businesses from non-compliance issues. Here we focus on the E-Verify process, which provides real-time status checks for immigration compliance. The first step is when the employee gives their Social Security number along with documents that prove they are authorized to work. Next, the employer inputs this information into the E-Verify system once Form I-9 is completed. Finally, the system quickly returns either a confirmation that everything is in order or a tentative non-confirmation, which means further investigation is needed. This flow ensures that employment eligibility is verified efficiently and accurately. Let's break down the key aspects of the H-1B visa sponsorship and how it relates to employment immigration. First, the H-1B visa is designed for specialty occupations. This means the job must require highly specialized knowledge, and typically, the employee needs at least a bachelor's degree or its equivalent to qualify. Next, there's the prevailing wage requirement. Employers sponsoring an H-1B worker must pay a wage that reflects the standard for that position. Considering the job location and the current labor market, this ensures fair compensation and protects the domestic workforce. The selection process for most private employers involves a lottery system. Due to the high demand, applicants enter an annual CAP registration, and a random selection determines who moves forward. This makes the process competitive and somewhat unpredictable. Regarding the visa duration, the H-1B is usually granted for up to 3 years initially. However, extensions are common, often allowing the visa holder to stay for up to 6 years in total. Finally, some categories are exempt from the annual cap. These include positions at certain universities, nonprofit research organizations, and government research entities. This exemption helps facilitate work in specialized fields without the limitation of the lottery system. Understanding these points is crucial for grasping how corporate sponsorship works within the H-1B program and the broader framework of business immigration law. Temporary Protected Status, or TPS, is designed to help nationals from certain countries stay and work in the United States temporarily when conditions back home make it unsafe to return. This could be due to war, natural disasters, or other extraordinary instability. The key benefit of TPS is that it grants lawful presence and work authorization for the duration of the designated period. However, this protection is only valid while the country remains designated for TPS, meaning it can be extended or ended by the Department of Homeland Security. To maintain their status and work permission, eligible individuals generally need to re-register on time, ensuring their protection stays active. This framework balances humanitarian concerns with legal compliance to support those in need. Here, we're looking at the different legal pathways businesses use to manage employment authorization and work visas. These pathways are crucial because they determine how companies bring in talent temporarily or transition workers to permanent status. First, the L11 visa is designed for intra-company transfers. This means managers, executives, or employees with specialized knowledge can move within a company's global network to the U.S. without starting the visa process from scratch. Next, the EB1 category is for employment-based immigrants who are considered priority workers. This is a pathway for those aiming to obtain permanent residence due to their extraordinary abilities, outstanding achievements, or managerial positions. Then, the F1 OPT allows international students who have completed their studies to work temporarily in their field, giving them practical experience while staying in the country legally. Finally, green cards represent the ultimate goal for many. They grant ongoing authorization to live and work permanently in the U.S. Understanding these options helps businesses plan how to hire and retain the right talent while complying with immigration laws. On this slide, we're focusing on prohibited employment practices related to employment and immigration compliance boundaries. First, national origin discrimination is strictly forbidden. This means employers cannot base hiring, firing, or job assignments on factors like birthplace, ancestry, accent, or ethnicity. It's important to remember that everyone deserves equal treatment regardless of their background. Next, unfair immigration-related practices are also unlawful, especially when employers show bias based on citizenship status or apply selective verification beyond what federal law requires. This can lead to serious legal consequences. Document fraud is another critical issue. Employers must never knowingly accept false work authorization papers or demand specific documents without a valid reason, as this behavior creates liability. For businesses employing migrant and seasonal agricultural workers, strict rules apply. They must comply with all duties regarding disclosure, wages, housing, transportation, and accurate record-keeping for these protected workers. Lastly, retaliation is prohibited. Employees have the right to report violations, assert their rights, assist with investigations, or file claims without fear of punishment or negative repercussions. Together, these points underline the importance of fair and lawful employment practices in the context of immigration and business law. Here we focus on the critical intersection between employment and immigration law, which creates some unique compliance challenges for businesses. First, employers must carefully verify a worker's authorization to work, but they have to do this without engaging in discrimination based on national origin or citizenship status. This balance between status verification and avoiding discrimination is the first major tension. Second, there are strict record retention requirements. Employment files, I-9 forms, and audit trails need to be maintained accurately and consistently. Missing or incomplete records can lead to serious problems during audits or investigations. Third, there's the risk of a private right of action. This means that just one mistake in hiring or verification can lead not only to enforcement actions by agencies, but also to civil lawsuits from employees or applicants. Essentially, compliance exists right where these employment, worker protection, and immigration laws overlap, and businesses must navigate these tensions carefully to avoid legal exposure. When we look at how business organizations affect employment law, it's important to understand that legal responsibilities and control differ based on the type of entity involved. Starting with a sole proprietorship, the owner carries personal liability. This means they're directly responsible for payroll, I-9 compliance, and any wage claims, which can even reach their personal assets. Moving on to partnerships, partners can bind the firm, meaning any partner's actions can affect the whole partnership. They also share joint liability for employment claims, so it's critical for partnerships to have clear agreements allocating compliance duties to manage risk effectively. Corporations, on the other hand, are separate legal entities. This separation generally protects shareholders from personal liability. Employment is handled by the corporation itself, and having formal policies in place provides a strong defense in compliance matters. Lastly, limited liability companies, or LLCs, preserve limited liability for their members or managers. Control over supervision lies with those members or designated managers, and the operating agreement should clearly outline employment duties and responsibilities to avoid confusion. Overall, the organizational structure shapes who is liable, who controls employment matters, and how compliance is managed, which is vital to understanding risk and legal accountability in any business setting. When we consider business organizations and how liability is allocated, it's important to understand the differences in structure and the resulting exposure. Starting with sole proprietorships, the owner bears direct personal liability, so protecting personal assets becomes critical. That's why having strong employment practices liability insurance, or EPLI, along with workers' compensation coverage, is essential to managing those risks. Moving on to partnerships. Liability is shared among partners, especially when it comes to employment claims. Because of this joint liability, insurance policies should be carefully crafted to match how risks and responsibilities are divided within the partnership. This alignment helps protect all parties involved. For corporations, the structure provides a significant advantage because the entity itself typically absorbs liability. This corporate veil helps limit the risk to individual shareholders. However, it's still vital to maintain robust corporate insurance policies, including directors' and officers' coverage, along with clear indemnification agreements. These measures ensure that both the company and its leadership are safeguarded from potential claims. In summary, understanding how liability exposure varies with each business structure guides us in making the right insurance and protection decisions tailored to each organization's unique risks. When we talk about indemnification and risk allocation, it's really about how businesses manage and reduce their exposure to potential liabilities. Essentially, they decide upfront who is responsible for paying, who gets protected, and which risks get transferred to others. This framework divides liability based on several key factors: contracts, insurance coverage, the roles individuals hold within the company, and relevant statutes. First, operating agreement provisions set the internal rules for reimbursing owners, managers, and the entity itself. This helps clarify financial responsibilities inside the company. Second, insurance requirements come into play by shifting defined external risks onto specific types of coverage. For example, employment issues, general liability, or fiduciary duties can be covered through targeted insurance policies. Third, protections for officers and directors are important. As long as their decisions are made in good faith, they often receive defense and indemnity support to protect them from personal loss. Lastly, employee benefit obligations are carefully managed so that plan administration and statutory duties remain clearly allocated and enforceable. Together, these four components create a comprehensive system that helps companies navigate complex risks while protecting their people and assets. Now let's review some key takeaways and best practices when it comes to employment compliance. First, it's essential to have clear, well-documented policies in place. This ensures everyone understands the rules and expectations. Next, verifying employee eligibility is crucial to comply with legal requirements and to maintain a trustworthy workforce. Properly classifying workers, whether as employees or contractors, helps avoid costly misclassification issues. Preventing harassment is a priority by fostering a respectful and safe workplace environment. We must also make reasonable accommodations for disabilities, supporting inclusivity and complying with the law. Lastly, staying informed about changes in laws and regulations keeps your organization proactive and compliant. Following these principles helps build a solid foundation for your business and protects it from legal risks. To wrap up, I want to emphasize the importance of using authoritative sources as your foundation when navigating business law and compliance. Start with trusted government agencies like the Department of Labor, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. They provide essential guidance and regulatory information. Next, leverage compliance tools such as I-9 Central, E-Verify, wage and hour fact sheets from the DOL, and OSHA's resources for small businesses. These tools help translate legal requirements into practical steps you can implement. Additionally, familiarize yourself with key legal references, including the Fair Labor Standards Act, Title VII, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Immigration and Nationality Act. Understanding these statutes is crucial for effective compliance and risk management. Finally, for ongoing professional development, engage with organizations like SHRM, local HR associations, state bar CLE programs focused on employment law, and keep up to date with business law case updates and alerts. Continuous learning ensures you stay current as laws and best practices evolve. By combining authoritative resources, practical tools, solid legal knowledge, and ongoing education, you're well positioned to navigate the complexities of business law confidently and responsibly.